Hey, welcome back to the Daily Narrative. This is Jeff. Today we are going to talk about Pelosi's spin. What the heck is this going on? Two standards. We're going to talk about Biden. Does he have dementia? Is he taking drugs? What is going on with that? And how about we talk a little bit about all of those CDC lies that they tried to destroy this economy? Let's start. Bam, and we're back. So this is crazy, right? So as it always stands, it always seems to be this way. The Democrats are always do as I say, not as I do. Why? Because of government overreach. Why is it that the Democrats are zealots in nature, supporting the violent uprising in America until what? Until it no longer pulled in their direction. So it was convenient. They loved to see the fires, the burnings when they thought it meant that it was against Trump because of Trump derangement syndrome. But what about a little bit about the Pelosi Democrat derangement syndrome, which is someone in an article said that Pelosi is entering her Marie Antoinette stage, let them eat cake, where she doesn't really care anymore, right? She was in there with her double sub-zero fridge a few months ago with all of her ice cream when people were losing jobs. Now people aren't allowed to have their haircuts. Salons are closed in San Francisco, and then Nancy Pelosi pops up in San Francisco in a salon, and now she's trying to turn the narrative back on the owner and saying shame on them for all of this. I mean, it's great, this derangement, right? It seems like it's some sort of a mental disorder that they're suffering from. And then we have Joe Biden, who obviously there was something wrong with him. He's obviously suffering from some sort of a dementia. It has continued, but one of the things that Trump brought up is the fact that maybe there's a question that Biden is on some sort of drugs. Now, there's all sorts of drugs that could be given for dementia that bring people back to more of a sane state. And obviously, you go from chaos to some sort of normalcy. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't mesh. And the fact that the left, is still supporting and promoting him, although they knew all this time that he was sick. There's something wrong with it. It's derangement syndrome, Democrat derangement syndrome, Pelosi derangement syndrome, Biden derangement syndrome. It's too far-fetched, right? And then you have the CDC. So here we have 6 months, 6 months, where they've attempted to demoralize and destroy the economy. Hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people out of work. Everything flipped upside down. Schools are shut. People are in their homes. All this chaos and turmoil. People committing suicide. The highest divorce rates in probably history, because of this. Child endangerment. People aren't going to the hospital and dying of everything else. And then what comes out? What does the CDC say? Oh, yeah, well, maybe only 6% actually died of COVID. All the other 94% died because they had other causes and they happen to have COVID. COVID might have been the leading cause. Now, this all has to be put into perspective because last year, 60,000 people died of the flu, the cause of the flu. 138 children died because of the flu. 9,500, 9,600 people have died of COVID, and they've destroyed the economy. Now, none of the numbers make sense to begin with. 180,000. The rest of the world, regardless of what they do, no one has hit those kind of numbers. So statistically, it doesn't make sense. So the scientists, the physicians, the mathematicians, everyone has lost their minds because they haven't put science into perspective. They haven't put mathematics into perspective, statistics. So statistically speaking, if the entire world, some doing, some not doing, following guidelines, nothing changes. The numbers are always exactly the same in terms of percentage. So the U.S., 180,000, obviously that number was derived fictitiously from someplace, and now the CDC finally comes out and admits that only 9,500 died directly as a cause. So what gives? What is the agenda? So now what we see, and everything kind of makes sense as you have Nancy Pelosi running around and she's getting her hair cut when no one else can. The salons are closed. And then you have that other mayor or governor or whatever, and he was in another state and he was dining inside, but in his area, they couldn't dine inside. Nancy Pelosi's done the same thing. So what's good for you isn't good for them because they live a different lifestyle. So they want you to become their subjects. Yet they are employees of the American people, yet they treat Americans as their subjects. There's something completely wrong with that. Now, when it comes to the CDC, so if we look at the progression of all of this, right? You have the progression where all of a sudden out of nowhere you have a plague or an illness that stems out of China. Right? We know it came out of China. We know it didn't come from animals. We know that the World Health Organization lied about the person-to-person contact. They knew in China, they knew early on that it was person-to-person, yet they covered it up. And the World Health Organization covered it up. The CDC in this country, right in the beginning, they had certain guidelines. Don't wear masks, wear masks, blah, 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 whatever. They were trying to figure out how the narrative would work. Eventually, they got everyone into a psychosis because, yes, there were illnesses and it was bad in that segment. But now we're looking at the numbers don't mesh in this country. They tried to make the U.S. out to be like some astronomical, ridiculous number that nowhere else in the world. China, 1.3 billion people, nowhere near it. India, with people all over the place. There's no containment. The healthcare system isn't on par with what we have in the United States, and yet we are the ones that suffered the most. Doesn't make sense at all. So now we see that it was fictitious. Again, so you start out with putting people in their homes. You demoralize the economy and destroy the economy. Don't let people open their businesses. Destroy businesses, small businesses, restaurants, travel, the travel industry, the cruise industry. It's crazy what they did. Now it goes back to the new Green Deal. I should have made a whole video just on this aspect of it. But the new Green Deal that they were promoting, they wanted to cut international air travel. They want to cut travel pretty much entirely. So now we have the airline industry is suffering. We see flights cut and diminished to almost non-existent levels. You can't travel to every country. Now you're seeing people putting restrictions on travel and quarantine and all these different things. So, so you have this idea of, okay, the new Green Deal, but where did all this stuff come from? So now, you look at it. So, you try to figure things out. You try to piece this all together, and it's crazy, right? So, so you have this plague out of China. They shut the economy down. Then they take advantage of what that means as they demoralized everybody. And then the next step is the racial tension, the divide. Then you have this Antifa group and the BLM group, and people are burning stuff and looting and riots and all this stuff. Everything is like this fictitious narrative that was developed and created in order to win a victory in November. How does that sound? It's crazy. If 6 months ago, if you would have said something like that, there's going to be this illness and there's going to be riots and they're going to burn and they're going to loot and it's going to be all over the country. It's crazy. It seems like this crazy wacko theory, but that's exactly the timeline. This is exactly what's happened. The Democrats pushing this initiative and this narrative. Even in the DNC and their convention, they had this bleak, dark outlook of the United States where they've really undermined the fact of American greatness. They've taken it to a whole new level. After the RNC, we saw the violence, and now they're even changing that narrative again, right? They're changing this violent narrative and this rhetoric, saying that it's white nationalists are the ones that are causing all the damage and looting and destruction. Unlikely, very unlikely. But this is the abusive relationship cycle that's over and over and over again. They lie to you, they abuse you, they beat you, and then it's your fault. The Democrats are really good at that narrative. It's their derangement syndrome. It's their demoralization as they try to demoralize community after community after community, as they've demoralized and taken advantage of the Jewish community and the black community and the Latino communities. What's left of the Democrat Party? Who's left? Who would want to be part of the Democrat Party at this point? It doesn't make any sense. I don't get it. I don't know who would want to be part of that Democrat Party anymore. When you see, you see the reality in front of you. You see the violence in the streets and how they promoted it and embraced it. the mayor in Portland who's now left his own apartment condo building because he's a jackass, because he's destroyed his city. So there you go. This is their world. This is the world they live in. This is the world that everybody's going to live in if Biden becomes president, and that's not going to happen. So they've created a disaster. They've created a mess, and now they're trying to spin the narrative. Why? Because their polling is bad. They've created all of this stuff. The fact that Nancy Pelosi was out there without a mask in a salon with other people around her just proves the fact of the hypocrisy and the lies that they tell. They allow the rioting in the streets, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people packed together, no masks. But yet, when the Republican convention came together and you had people sitting together, that was the worst thing in the world. The Sturgis Bike Fest. All of a sudden, there's going to be hundreds of people that are going to come back and are going to die from it. And they keep highlighting if somebody's sick from that event. Now, they have yet to highlight anybody getting sick or dying because of the riots, other than the people that die in the riots because of the violence from the left, from the fascist elements. So that's the narrative. These are the things that the people on the left and in the center are waking up to. And they're realizing they don't want any more of this insanity. So that is it for today. I'll look forward to coming back here on the Daily Narrative. Look forward to having you guys here with us on the Daily Narrative. Again, this is Jeff. If you liked the video, thumbs up, thumbs down, comments below, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one.